Welcome to another edition of The Wise Guy. You know me, The Wise Guy. I'm your host, Jim Tedesco, and the topic today is how we treat our elderly. It's going to be a good topic, so stay tuned after the break and we'll dive in.
Sit tight, the wise guy will return shortly.
Alright, I'm back. And today is Friday. Hey, Friday. August 14th, 2026, the year of our Lord. Today we're going to talk about a sensitive topic that lately nobody really wants to talk about. Well, probably never they want to talk about it, but we need to have a discussion about it because what I'm seeing and what I have seen literally disgusts me. And I'm talking about how we take care of the elderly. You know, our parents, grandparents. You know, realistically, we've been throwing them in homes, nursing homes, or sometimes they even choose to go on their own and then regret it later on. Well, I want to talk about that today. And I have solutions. And we're going to get into that later on, but first, let's talk about the nursing home itself. How do they operate? What are they doing for our elderly people, for our loved ones? I don't think they're doing that good of a job, actually. I don't think they're doing anything, to be honest with you, rather than warehousing old people waiting for them to kick off. It sure does seem like it. So, case in point was my dad. This was back in 2010, actually 2009 when he was admitted in there. He was only in there a little over a year. I was approached by the Veterans Administration, of which my dad was a veteran of World War II. And they told me that I had to put my dad in a nursing home. And I says, but why can't we keep him here at the house? We're taking care of him. He's fine. Oh, no, you're not qualified to take care of him, they told us. You have to put him in a nursing home, and you're going to do it, or we're going to cut off his money. Well, he was getting $3,200 a month from the VA. And we used that money, and it was all documented, so we didn't, piss it away on ourselves. We took care of him with that money. He needed medical attention. He needed rides back and forth. He had all, really early stage Alzheimer's. He knew who I was. He knew who my wife was. But he didn't really know anybody else. He didn't know what year it was or even what state he lived in anymore. It was terrible, but so they says, well, you're going to put him in a home or we're going to take away his money. I said, all right, fine. So begrudgingly, I did it because, I'm disabled myself. At that time, I was getting, I think, like $1,100 or $1,200 a month from disability. And, we took care of a lot of the bills and stuff. But there wasn't much left over, if at all. So taking care of my dad wasn't going to happen without his money. So we had literally no choice but to put him in a nursing home. So I scouted around Naples and found what I thought was the better of the lesser of evils, I guess you could say. It seemed like a fairly decent nursing home, and I went ahead and got him admitted into it. Of course, he hated it. Every time I went, we see him every week. We'd go there every week, and he'd say, when you're taking me home? And it's like, well, you have to wait a little bit longer, Dad, I couldn't take him when I wanted to, but I couldn't. So this was a weekly occurrence with him. We'd go to see him, and every week I went, I'd find something wrong with where he was at. I could have transferred him to another home, but the other ones were actually even worse than where he was in. Now, did they abuse him? No, I don't think they abused him. At least not physically. Did they not really take care of him? At first, the first problem we had with him was the first, I think, 2 weeks he was in there. We went to visit him, and he had a roommate. There were 2 beds in per room. And his roommate, I don't know what was wrong with him, but all he did was scream 24/7, you know. And I said, Dad, how you play? I don't like it, but there's nothing I can do. I said, well, I can do something about it. So I went to administration. I said, look, you got to get that guy out of that room or put my dad in a different room, one or the other. Nobody should be exposed to that all day, all night. So I don't know what's wrong with that guy, but he's got some big problems going on, So they moved him out. I didn't hear him screaming anymore after that. I bet you they killed him. They'll morphine you out until you overdose. And, cause of death, old age, So my dad was, 90 years old at that point. We put him in. And he wasn't doing all that bad, except for, the early Alzheimer's was rough on him because he couldn't remember things. And he did experience some things like sundowner syndrome, and, where right at that time he always wanted to escape and go somewhere, And there wasn't much you could do about it. And, of course, he did escape the nursing home once. At least he got out in the parking lot. Nobody could explain how, because the doors all had electronic combination locks on them. And I can't believe that he memorized one of them and actually, I think somebody screwed up and didn't latch the door. But I can't prove that. And at least they found him, because they called him in. Well, your dad escaped. We don't know where he's at. Well, go look for him, So we jump in the car. We get down. By the time we got down there, they found him. So that was, like I said, that was the first problem with the screamer. They'd been in there for a few months. Like I said, we were seeing him literally every week. And his fingernails were like a woman's. They weren't cutting his nails. So I went back to administration. I says, aren't you supposed to, take care of them? The patients, and cut their nails, cut their hair, all that stuff. Yeah, well, you're not doing it. I don't think my dad's had his nails trimmed since he got in here. They're like a woman's. Not that, but he's got long hair and a beard, He was always clean shaven. He didn't like having, facial hair. So they got him in there, and like that day they got his nails trimmed. They shaved him, cut his hair, the whole 9 yards, I says, look, I don't want to see this shit again. I said, because if I do, there's going to be some lawsuits. And I found out they were getting $9,000 a month to house him there. $9,000. And I'm going, for that kind of money, they ought to be kissing his ass, serving him high-end food. And the food they served was slop. We got there a couple of times. It was either lunch or dinner. And they said, you want to eat any of this? Well, look, I ain't eating that shit. I don't even know what the hell it is. Looked like gruel, It was disgusting. He was very unhappy, he just wanted to get the hell out of there. I don't blame him. His life at that point was, sitting in his room. They said, well, he doesn't get involved in anything. I said, well, why would he? He's got Alzheimer's. He doesn't even know where he's at. All he knows is he's not home. Well, we can't force him to, get involved. I said, I understand that. But there must be something that can be done, So they said, well, maybe you should hire him a companion while he's here, for a few hours, several days out of the week. I said, well, I guess I could get my wife to do it. Oh, no, it can't be a family member. Why not? Well, it just can't be. And I'm going, so what would you be willing to pay this caretaker companion? Well, they get anywhere from $30 an hour up. I says, all right, my wife will do it for $15. Well, like we said, it can't be a family member. I said, well, why not? What's the difference? So you'd rather spend $30, $35 or more per hour for a complete stranger that my dad doesn't know, probably doesn't want nothing to do with, rather than my wife, which my dad, he knows her, he likes her, and she'd do it for half the money. Oh, no, we can't do that. I said, oh, fine, fuck you. He's not getting a companion then. And you're not just pissing his money away. I said, how much kickback do you get out of that? And he looked at me like, well, sir, we don't even go there. He says, you do. Why else would you be pushing it, So then I found out, it was after about the third or fourth month he was there, that he was still getting his money from the VA, $3,200 a month. They set up a trust account for him, bank account. He couldn't touch it. They said, your dad's got a lot of money in the bank. I said, yeah, what's your point? Well, you need to spend it. I says, why do I need to spend it? Well, you just do. I says, but he has everything he needs. They said, the VA covers whatever medical needs he has. He's still getting Social Security. He was a notch baby, so he didn't get a lot. He only got $600 from them, but still. So I says, and if he needs anything that isn't covered, I'll pay for it. I'll provide it, whether it be clothing or whatever. But realistically, the VA and Social Security will cover almost 99% of his needs. Well, there's a lot of money in there, and you got to spend it. I said, I don't have to do anything. So they says, well, why don't you buy a new car or something? Transport him to the doctor. I said, I already took possession of his car. It's practically new. It only has 13,000 miles on it. I don't want a new car. And that's just a big waste of money to me. We don't need anything. Let the money sit in the bank. So they were a little pissed off that I wouldn't spend the money, right? And I wouldn't let them spend it either. I said, and you don't touch a fucking dollar of that money, because it ain't yours, it's his. And if nothing else, when he does pass on, that'll be our inheritance, which is basically what happened. By the time he did pass, he had $63,000 in the bank. Me and my brother and sister got $13,000 and change each, which I was in control of, by the way. So it was ridiculous. Every week there was some fucking thing going on. The food was garbage. They didn't take care of him. Half the time he was wearing the same clothes day after day. I don't even know if they were being washed, And of course, a couple of times we took him out, take him out to eat or whatever, nothing fancy, but, maybe a fast food joint or Red Lobster or someplace, just to get him out of the place, And they didn't give me any grief over that, because they said, if I want to take him out of here, I'll take him out of here, and there ain't a fucking thing you can do about it, So, well, you're going to bring him back, right? I said, well, yeah. I told him, I said, look, you assholes put me in a position where I can't take care of him, because you're holding his money over my head. It's bullshit. It should be illegal, Well, they just don't want you using the money for anything other than him. I said, look, I have keeping records for the 2 years that I took care of him before bringing him in here. I said, I have a receipt for every last dime that was spent on him, and I can prove that I touched none of it, So don't even fucking go there, or I'll sue you for defamation, So anyway, needless to say, he was in there, and it was when right after his 91st birthday. His birthday was on October 6th. November 10th, he passed away. And that was, I believe, it was in 2010. They called me up 2 o'clock and went, well, your dad, he passed on. I said, all right, well, you want to come and see him? I said, not particularly, no. I said, go ahead and put him on ice, and I'll make arrangements for his cremation. That's what he wanted, So the next day I went out. I had to go to the VA's office, get his DD 48, I think it is, that he served in the military, because he was entitled to a lot of VA benefits for his cremation and burial. We had him buried at a VA cemetery in Sarasota, and that was that. But I mean, it was ridiculous. They literally, the way they treated him, I thought was just insanity, And the only reason they did such a good job on him, if you want to call it that, because I was there every fucking week monitoring everything they did. I mean, they couldn't shit without me knowing about it, If I had been like some family members that put their parents in nursing homes, they put them in there and they forget about them. Could you imagine what they don't do for those patients? So let's fast forward to 2026. My mother-in-law. She's 86 years. Well, I think she's 87 now. She was living in our guest house, one room apartment. She was doing okay, but she got a bug up her ass, and she never could sit still for any length of time. She tried to leave, went up to Michigan for a while, and then decided that wasn't for her. Well, duh. Came back down, and then she just didn't want to be here, So no, that's fine, whatever. So apparently one of her nurse's aides came over and talked her into going into assisted living. So of course, and once again, this should be illegal. The assisted living nurse fucking promised her all kinds of crap. Oh, we'll take good care of you. You can do this, this, and that, and everything else. You'll be just like living here, but we'll be watching over you. So she voluntarily went into assisted living. Big mistake. As soon as she got there, she found out real quick that they didn't do shit for her. And she I don't know if she really needed assistance or not, but the first thing they do is they put her on Xanax, they put her on this, painkillers. They drugged her right up, So the first thing that happens, I think she was only there a week, and she fell. Broke her hip, she had a compound fracture in her hip. It wasn't terrible, but it's still a problem. So then she goes into the hospital where they fix her hip, give her more drugs, because of the pain and whatever. Well, even though she went through rehab, now she's stuck in a wheelchair. She can't walk anymore. So they finally got her up to where she could walk a little bit, and she was still in assisted living at this point. She falls again. Didn't get hurt too badly. She put a gash in her head. And nobody seemed to give a shit, It's like, well, why is she falling? Why aren't you there assisting her, Like all those promises you made. Oh, we'll help you use the bathroom. We'll help you get dressed. We'll help you eat. Prepare your food, Meanwhile, she's living in a cubicle that's smaller than my guest house. It's ridiculous. So she fell again. And at that point, they said, well, we're going to be more aggressive with the rehab. So they moved her to a rehab facility temporarily. It was supposed to be temporarily. And trying to get her to rehabilitate. The problem is she wasn't really getting anywhere. Meanwhile, while she's in rehab, the fucking Haitians, and yeah, that's what they are, were robbing her blind at the assisted living home. They stole half her stuff. And nobody knows what happened to any of it. So meanwhile, my wife, her daughter, she's like, well, what the hell's going on? All this stuff's gone. The good stuff. The crap is still there. But all the good shit's, it's gone. Nobody knows what happened to it. They stole her clothes and everything. Not all of it, but most of it, So, about that time, I told Deb, I said, you need to get medical power of attorney on her. I said, you got to start overseeing this shit because she's just getting worse and worse. They're just going to run her into the ground till she's dead, I've seen this before. This is what they do. So she got a hold of the administrator at the rehab center, which was very helpful to us, and got Deb medical power of attorney, Deb's not really familiar with it, but I kind of coached her a little bit on what she needs to do. I said, look, you got to be assertive. You got to go in there and you tell these people, this is what you're going to do. Not will you please do this. This is what I'm telling you will do. It's the only way anything will get done. If they see weakness, they'll exploit it. And they do, believe me, and they are doing it here again, once again. So they finally moved her into the nursing home. They took her out of rehab. She's out of rehab now. Still can't walk, really. But they took her out of assisted living and moved her in a nursing home. So because we had to move all the what she had left out of the assisted living, and like I said, a lot of the stuff was gone, So she's stuck in nursing home now. She's not happy. She wants to leave, you know. Now, I told Deb, I said, you know, I would bring her here. We have a spare bedroom, but they won't give her any money for us to take care of her. And, you know, like I said, I don't make a lot of money. You know, I'm down to, you know, single digits in value, in dollars at the end of the month, because we got to take care of our own bills, food, car insurance, all that stuff, electric bill, whatever. It's all expensive. Bringing her in, of course, will raise some of that, which doesn't bother me that much, except that I don't have the money to do it. I would do it in a heartbeat. I'd get her the fuck out of that nursing home in a hot second, you know. So we're kind of at a standstill right now on what's going to be done. Meanwhile, they doubled their dose of Xanax. She's still falling left and right. Deb gets a call like twice a week. Oh, your mom fell again. I says, you need to go in there and say, hey, why is she falling? What are you doing about it? And how are you going to prevent it from happening again? Deb's afraid to do it because she's afraid to make waves. You know, I said, no, you got to do this. You know. I said, I'd do it, but hey, I don't have the authority, unfortunately. As with my dad, I had full power of attorney on both medically and financially. And believe me, I asserted it. You know, they were terrified of me in the nursing home. They really were. They hated me, you know, because they knew I wasn't fucking around. Even when he died, after he passed, I went to collect his belongings. Because we bought him things, you know, a little flat screen TV, a VCR. He liked cowboy movies back from the 50s, you know, so we got him all that stuff. He had a nice watch. Everything was gone, you know. And I went to the administrator. I said, look, I'm going to give you an hour to find this stuff, or I'm going to tear this place apart looking for it. I know it's here in premises, you know. Don't bullshit me. And, you know, you're getting $9,000 a month to take care of my dad, which you did a shit job of. And then you steal his stuff? What the fuck is wrong with you people? So amazingly, they found everything but the watch. The watch was gone. It wasn't expensive or anything. It looked nice, but, you know. So I said, well, we'll let that go. But I got the TV back. I got the VCR, the tapes, photographs. He had some framed pictures and stuff that was in his room that we helped, you know, put in there for him. And they tried to steal all that shit. Oh, no. That's not going to happen. And this is a common problem. And of course, you know, once again, they had a lot of Haitians working at that nursing home. And I know for a fact, and people might get upset, but Haitians are fucking thieves. They don't care. They will rob you blind and then swear they didn't do it. But they do steal shit. I've seen it time and again at garage sales, in stores. They're master shoplifters, you know. And they steal shit and they turn around and resell it, try and make money with it. Well, I ain't putting up with that horse shit. And like I said, the same thing's going on with my mother-in-law. Fucking Haitians are stealing shit. And unfortunately, the Haitians make up about 95% of the caretakers in any given situation, whether it be assisted living or a full-out nursing home. We need to get these fucking people out of them places. Well, actually, that's not enough. We're going to get into that in a little bit, but... So, as it stands right now, my mother-in-law is declining rapidly. You know, she's starting to seriously age. She was doing good before she went into assisted living. You know, she was mobile. You know, she did fall a couple of times over here, but not enough to get hurt. You know, it's going to happen. And I'd yell at her. You know, I said, look, Ruth, you got to be more careful, you know. Take your time. Don't be in a hurry. Don't try and run up that two-step, you know, step stool, because you might fall off, you know. And make sure you got something to hang on to. You're not getting any younger, you know. And I'm in the same boat. I'm much younger than her. Like I said, she was 85 when she left here. I'll be 67 next month, but, you know, but I've noticed since the stroke that I have balance issues. Fortunately, I haven't fallen any time, but, you know, I come close a couple of times, and it's like, all right, back down, take your time, make sure you got something to brace yourself with, and you'll be fine. And that's what I've been doing. Every time I go to the doctor, have you fallen? Not fucking yet, asshole, so go fuck yourself, you know. I don't say that, but that's what I'm thinking. But, you know, it's like, no, I haven't fallen. Even if I did, I wouldn't tell you anyway. You know? And trust me, never confide in your doctor anything of a personal nature, like falling, memory issues. They can't and they won't help you. They'll use it against you. And that's another issue I have, too. You know, the doctor's notes that they're always scribbling while you're talking. Yeah, you don't know what they're saying, and that needs to change. That needs to be your business, and you need to sign off on anything they write before they could put it in your history. Because you don't know what they're saying. I mean, I know, you know, my history must be terrible because I don't take any shit from doctors, you know. A few months back, they wanted to put me on that GLP-1, you know, the stuff for diabetes because I'm diabetic. And I said, no, I'm not taking that. I'm not taking anything that's going to cause me more harm than it will be to, you know, to fix me. Well, you should try. I don't know. So the answer is no. End of subject, you know. I don't fuck around, you know. When I say no, no means no, that's it. He's writing shit down. I know what he's writing down there. Patient refuses treatment that might be beneficial to him. Says you. I say otherwise. I don't want stomach paralysis. I don't want fucking Alzheimer's or dementia. You know. I don't want to drop dead or have face drop or suffer a stroke. I've already been there, done that. So, you know, for me, the benefits don't outweigh the risks. You know, yes, I'm a little overweight and I'll figure it out at some point, but I'm not taking, and I have a fast rule. I won't take any medication that's been around at least, you know, less than 5 years. And even longer if they had problems with it. Like I won't do the anti-cholesterol medicines. I tried them once. They put me on them because they said my cholesterol was too high. It was 6 points over normal. You know. And I said, nah. I said, I was starting to get the muscle problems. And I said, I stopped taking it. I said, I don't want this shit. You know. It's not good for you. Turns out it's not, and it actually accelerates Alzheimer's. So I stopped that, and they got mad about it. You know, well, won't you try it? Not, we're not trying a different one because they're all the same. You can put a different name on it, but, you know, the, I can't think of the word. The ingredients are basically the same, you know. So no, I'm not just not taking it. My cholesterol's not high, you know. Well, you had a stroke and heart. I don't care what I had. It ain't got nothing to do with anything anyway, and I'm not taking it. End of subject. And since then, my cholesterol is actually below normal a little bit, which is a good thing, you know. And they can't figure it out. Well, you know, you're not taking any statins. Why is your cholesterol down? It's because I'm on a fucking carnivore diet, I guess. You know. Well, meat should raise your cholesterol. No, it doesn't. It does for some, but not everybody. Because everyone's different. And I had to figure out what worked for me, and I did, so fuck you, you know. And they get pissed off because, you know, it's like when I went and seen my kidney doctor, you know, when the first time I went, he said, well, you know, you might need a kidney transplant. I said, ain't happening, doc. Well, what do you mean? I said, we're not doing it. I said, you know, if I die, I die, then it's my time. I'm not taking somebody else's kidney. It's not worth the aggravation. Well, it could be life-saving. I said, it could also be a death sentence, too. I said, trust me, I'll get my kidneys back up to where they're reasonably good for a long time. 3 months later, I went to go see him. I had blood work every 3 months. He goes, I don't know how you did it, but you raised your kidney values and you don't need a transplant now. Told you. Well, if you keep it like this, you'll live another 50 years. Well, I'm not going to live 50 years, but, you know, I'd be over 100 years old if that were the case, but, you know, that's good to know. And actually, my kidneys have actually gotten a little bit better. I mean, little, you know, tiny bits over the last couple of years. Might be my faith in God, and I pray over it, you know, for him to heal me. And he's been doing a pretty good job so far. You know. And because, like I said, I'm watching my diet and the certain things. You know, after I had the big heart attack, they had me on a diuretic, water pill every day. So when I went to see the kidney, he says, "Well, you got to stop taking those every day. They're fucking up your kidneys." I said, "Well, what do how often is it?" He says, "Well, let's do it 3 days a week." It's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It's all right. So I started doing that. Probably the real reason why my kidneys came up. And now I'm down to like once a week because I drink a lot of hot tea, which is a natural diuretic, and I'm not holding water like I used to. Once again, you got to be your own doctor, you got to be your own lawyer, you got to be your own. I can't think of the word for it. You got to look. In other words, you got to look out for yourself because nobody else is going to. Everybody else is looking for the money, the payday. So this is what I'm running into with these nursing homes, that they're basically only interested in the money. They don't care about their patients. They'll tolerate them until they get fed up with them. They'll morphine them out until they drop dead and move on to the next patient. And my mother-in-law, she's a little, what's the word for it? Testy, maybe? I don't know if that's the right word, but, she's not compliant. She will bitch and she will moan and she'll yell and, it's like, no, I don't want to do that, And I'm sure they I think that's why they double their Xanax to, calm her down. They do the same thing with my dad, but not with Xanax. They use some other exotic drug that they give nut people, nut cases. And it zombified him. The last month before he passed, he just sat there and, with a grin on his face and didn't really acknowledge anything. What was it? It wasn't propanol, but it was something like that. And I said, you got to take him off that shit. Well, we need to because, he gets combative otherwise. Well, can you blame him? You basically kidnapped him. You got him caged up in a tiny room. You think he's combative, man? You better hope I never get in here, man. I'd be killing motherfuckers, So, and they know this. And like I said, this is part of the problem with the whole nursing home thing. And they're getting, like I said, the nursing home for him was $9,000 a month. This was back in, like I said, 2009. I don't know what they get today. It's probably a lot more. Maybe they're getting $15,000 a month now. They don't do anything for that money. The help, like I said, they're hiring Haitians, so they're getting sub pay. So obviously the administrators are the ones, raking it in. And I'm sure they let the Haitians, the caretakers, steal what they want, figuring, well, better than actually having to pay them. Let them steal what they want. Nobody gives a shit anyway. Which is probably true in, 80% of the cases. So I'm pissed off about the whole thing, and I really want, and I'm hoping that our new governor, if he becomes, James Fishback is running for governor in Florida, and I'm gonna write him if he wins, and see if I get him to do some changes in the laws. All that needs to happen, and this is how we fix it. All that needs to happen is, and President Trump, he actually brought this up too, but didn't have a solution, a financial solution. But he said, the children should take care of their parents in their parents' end days. I agree. We used to do it before I was born, but it was a lot cheaper to live back then. You had grandma and grandpa or mom and dad, they had a spare room and that's where they lived, and you cooked for them, cleaned their clothes, made sure they were well taken care of, and they lived longer and healthier than they would in a nursing home. And then all of a sudden, nursing homes became the standard. Well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to warehouse these old farts until we get tired and kill them. I mean, they don't say that, but that's what it amounts to, So I'm hoping that they'll come up with a solution by saying, all right, if you elect to bring your parent or parents home to live with you, that you will get X amount of dollars, a month or a year, whatever. We're going to say a month, to help take care of them. Because, in today's society, everything's through the roof expensive. And couples are having tough times just, taking care of themselves, maybe their kids. We don't have any kids, they're all grown and on their own, but, If they gave me an extra $500 a month, I'd take care of my mother-in-law in a fucking heartbeat, and that would cover whatever expenses would incur because she's living with us. Would it be easy? No, but you know what? That's the sacrifice all children should make. I mean, after all, they raised us, right? They took care of us till we were 18 or whatever. And we're not willing to take care of them for a few years in their last days on this earth. And I think a lot of the problem is, of course, is the money. Now, is there going to be abuse? Of course there will be. There always is, But you can't sacrifice everyone for the bad habits or bad acting of a few. If, say, Joe and Kathy decide to bring their parents in to live with them in their final days, and they get money and they don't take care of their parents, and the parents wither away or get sick or whatever, or hurt, then, lock up Joe and Kathy. Make them responsible, hold them accountable for how they treat their parents. I mean, it's terrible that they would even consider such, not taking care of their parents after what their parents did for them. But you're going to have cases like that, and that's how you deal with it, They said if, we bring Ruth here to live with us, that's Debbie's mother, my mother-in-law, and they give us X amount of dollars to take care of her, and we say, fuck that, she doesn't need the money. Let her starve, let her fucking, sit in her own shit and whatever. Then we should be held responsible, both of us, not just Deb, but me too, because, it's my house. And we should be held accountable. I have no issue with that. We wouldn't do such a thing. We would actually use the money on her, and help pay the bills that she would incur. I mean, is $500 enough? Well, that's cutting it close, but, she was getting almost $900 a month from Social Security SSI. They should continue to give her that money, or at least give it to us, so we can take care of her properly, get her clothing, medical attention, make sure she's always clean and eats well, and we would do that, But right now, there's no, what the hell is the word for it? There's nothing out there. There's no way to make that happen, because nobody's addressed it. Like I said, President Trump says, it would be better if the children of the parents took care of their parents in their final days. I agree. And I'm hoping that whoever's governor, I hope it's James Fishback, because he's the only decent guy on the governor's run. The other assholes, I don't think they give a shit one way or the other. But I believe James Fishback would probably try and find a way to get legislation passed where they could divert some of that money to the kids that take care of their elderly parents. That's the right thing to do. And it's going to be a lot cheaper. Like I said, I don't know what they get now, but let's just say they're still getting $9,000 a month. That's more than I get right now. I get $1,617 every month, plus the $600 from my rental unit. So right around $2,000 a month I get to, run things. If you gave me another $9,000, then I tell you what, I'd be living like a fucking king. But I don't need that much. So even if they only gave me $1,000, say, which is more than enough, I could take care of my mother-in-law. She'd be a lot happier living with us, I would assume, And everybody would come out ahead all the ways around. The government, the state would save a ton of money, That's $8,000 they don't have to shell out to a nursing home every month if they gave us $1,000. And they should shut these fucking nursing homes down, period. They shouldn't exist, and they damn sure shouldn't be run by unqualified illegals or barely legals like Haitians. And there should be cameras 24/7 on everybody that works there, so when they steal something, we can go ahead and pop them for it and jail them or deport them, either one, and say, look, we're not putting up with that shit, But I'd say so. I would like to see nursing homes go away. They should be a faded memory. And this assisted living is bullshit too. Because it's really not. I mean, they sent a woman over here from the assisted living. I think it's, I don't remember the name of it, but it's down there in Lake Placid. Nice place, sort of. But once again, you're in this cubicle that's, I have a 12 by 32 shed. And it's probably it's probably a third of the side of this shed. You know, it's tiny. There's no kitchenette. There's a bathroom and a bedroom combination living room. That's it. It's a small area. You got just enough room to walk around in. That's no way to live, you know. For $20,000, I could buy one of those tiny homes, put it in the backyard, hook up electric and water and everything else, and she could live in that. I mean, I wouldn't. I'd rather have her in the house where, you know, it would be easier to keep an eye on her. But, you know, they don't help with any of that shit. And for some that are still mobile but really can't be alone, you know, to any great degree, but why not a tiny home in the backyard? And the state should pay for it. You know why? Because it's a hell of a lot fucking cheaper than a nursing home or assisted living. Some of those assisted living places are $30,000 a month. What the fuck, man? And it's big money because they're popping up all over the place, you know. They're worse than data centers. Well, we have an aging population. We got to warehouse them somewhere. Well, what about their children? A lot of these people have kids that are, you know, probably my age, in their 50s or 60s. And that's another thing. They should be compelled to take care of their parents, you know. I mean, they really shouldn't have to. It should be a natural thing to want to see that your parents spend their final days in some sort of peace and happiness without being drugged out. And that'd be the first thing I told Deb. I said, you know, you got to go down there and tell them to take her up, take the Xanax away, and any other fucking drugs they're giving her. You know, something's making her fall, and they need to figure out which drug it is and cut it off. And of course, the Xanax is basically you know, it's a mental pill. Well, it's such a small, it doesn't matter. It's not good for you. They have proven it causes Alzheimer's or dementia. All right? Just for starters. You know, I'm so sick of hearing these drug commercials. Ask your doctor if the benefits outweigh the risks. If there's any risks, they don't outweigh the benefits. I don't care what anybody says, you know, especially when the risks are, you know, stroke, heart attack, sudden death, you know, loss of balance. What the fuck outweighs death? It's ridiculous, you know. So, something has to change there. And it's just going to have to be that way. So that's my solution. We need to get the president and Congress and the Senate and governors all on the same page. Let's do away with nursing homes and assisted living and get the parents' kids to start taking care of their parents. We owe them that. And that there's no argument on. We literally owe them that. It's not like they're going to live forever, you know. But we should make them comfortable and somewhat happy and at peace in their final days. Whether it be a year or 10 years. I'm okay with that. I'm willing to make that sacrifice. And I think most kids probably would if it came down to it. Especially if they knew what was really going on in nursing. A lot of them don't. Because they don't take an interest in it. Well, you know, I put my dad in nursing home a year ago. He seems to be okay. He's still breathing. Yeah, he might be breathing, but does he know who he is? Is he happy there? Probably not. Why would he be? When's the last time you went? Well, we see him, you know, every 6 months. Really? You know. This is a problem, and it needs to be fixed. And it may be up to us, you know, the average people, to push this through. Start letting our politicians know we're not going to put up with this shit. We don't want to see our parents or grandparents or anybody else warehoused and abused both emotionally and physically, and they are. And don't kid yourself that they're not, because they are. And all you need to do is divert some of that money over to the kids so we can take care of our parents, And whatever it takes. This shouldn't be that hard to do. Like I said, if, a tiny home is a solution, then the government should, finance the tiny home. If you have an extra bedroom or spare bedroom or whatever, if you're in a place where there's basements and you can convert your basement, the government should help you do that and prep it out for your parents. It's going to be cheaper down the road, Like I said, $9,000 a month, that was back in 2010. Here we are, 2026. They might be getting double that. I might be getting $20,000 a month. Who the hell knows? Whatever it is, it's too much. Back when my dad was in there, like I said, in 2009, $9,000 was a shitload of money. I was living comfortably on $1,200. Fortunately, he quit claimed the house to me and it was paid for. Otherwise, we would have been living in the street too. But, not everybody probably has that option. Maybe they do, I don't know. And they have to look at it. Every case is different. So there can't really be an across-the-board fix per se. Or maybe there can. There's ways around everything. And like I said, if you got kids that you didn't bring up correctly, and they don't really give a shit whether you live or die, if you're the parent or grandparent, well, you can't help that. There's nothing you can do. But it would be better to take people in that position and put them there. I remember when I lived in Bonita Springs many, many, many years ago, there was a house across the street from me. And it was kind of a nursing home, but not really. It was a big place. It was 6 bedrooms and I think 4 baths. And they had old men living there. No women, obviously, but just old men living there. And they had nurses and doctors, that would come by literally daily to take care of them. And they were all happy. I spoke to a few of them and said, this is pretty cool. He said, yeah, we all get along here and it's just like being at home, but with, with your friends. And they were all friendly to each other, so there was no animosity between any of them. And I said, that's a way to do it too, build a house or find a house that's big. 3 or 4 or 5 people in there, whether it be men or women. I don't think mixing it's probably a good idea unless, of course, they're married. But, put them in there and make sure there's medical assistance. And it's not really a nursing home now because they weren't really trapped there. They could leave if they wanted. Nobody had cars because they were too old to drive, But they had buses that would come in and take them shopping or whatever they needed to do. And they had no desire to escape because they were well taken care of. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. We could do that as well, where, like I said, in situations where the kids are not willing to, take care of their parents. And any kid that does that should be penalized severely. I don't give a fuck about my mom or dad. They can go pound sand. Well, so can you. And we're going to go ahead and see that actually happens to some degree, We're going to tax you for not taking care of your parents because you're assholes. And I mean, you can argue whether that's right or wrong or not, but you know what? It's the right thing to do. And this is the problem in the United States of America today. We know the right thing is to do in many instances, and yet so many refuse to do it. And there should be financial difficulty for those who, deflect their responsibilities. If you don't like it, well, fucking go somewhere else. I don't care. I mean, I see a lot of people, where the family members are all together, you know, a young couple, their parents are aging and they can't really take care of themselves, and they'll bring them in, you know, and treat them as family members because they are. And even though they don't get compensated for it, but they should, you know. And that's happening more often than not because, you know, things are getting tough out there. But the rules, like with SSI, because my mother-in-law didn't pay taxes, she worked under the table her entire life, you know, cash. So she gets basically a handout from the government, and they're real strict about it. When I first brought her in here to live in the guest house, they said, well, she can't live there because it's the same residence. They said, but it's separate. You know, she doesn't have her own address, but the unit's not attached to my house. It's a separate house, and I don't see the problem with it. Because they were going to say, well, we'll cut off her money if you take her in. And that's bullshit too, you know. It's like, well, I can't afford to fucking take care of her, you know. And that was their thing. Well, if she lives with you, we don't have to pay her anymore. Says who? You know, I mean, I charged her rent. I charged $600 a month rent for her to live there because, you know, electric bill, water bill, you know, and I needed the money, you know, to help my finances too. And that was, you know, that's cheap rent. It's 450 square foot apartment. It has a kitchenette in it, full bathroom and shower, plenty of room for a bed, couch, chair. I mean, it's a nice place, you know. I renovated the whole place when I bought the house. I put over $10,000 in that guest house. You know, we went through it completely and just redid everything practically. I replaced a shower stall, a sink, a toilet, installed a kitchenette sink in there, cabinetry and everything else. Replaced walls because they were rotten or broken. Replaced windows, the door. I mean, just completely refurbished the whole guest house. Because that was one of the reasons I bought the house. So I figured, well, I've got an income here, you know. I did not initially plan on bringing my mother-in-law in, but you know, it worked out that way. And even before she came in, I figured $600 a month was a fair price for rent, and everything's included. So you cut me a check for $600 every month, and you don't have to worry about electric bill or water or trash pickup, none of that shit. All included. You know, it's a deal. So, you know, the electric alone, it brings it up about $75 more a month because she got air conditioning. I put one of those mini splits in because they're very efficient and they do a good job. And like I said, so everything's all set up. It's worked great. But they, you know, oh, we can't give you any money because, you know, she's living in your residence. So what? You know? It's bullshit. But this is the problem with our government. They're always trying to find ways to fuck you out of your money. You know, well, in her case, it really wasn't her money because she didn't put in anything. But, you know, her ex-husbands or late husbands all paid taxes. They didn't live long enough to collect any of it, so it offsets it anyway. So she was only getting a mere pittance of what her late husbands got. I should say late ex-husbands, right? So what the fuck? I don't get it, you know. But that's the way our government works. They'll fuck you out of a dime if they think it'll benefit them somehow. And that shit needs to stop too. And they really do abuse the money. They don't know how to spend properly. Well, look, we're $40 trillion in debt. We didn't get that way because, you know, they were spending it economically or responsibly. And that needs to stop too. And that's a discussion for another time, so we won't get into it. But that's my plan anyway, and I think we need to, as the children of our parents and grandparents, if they're still alive, we should push for this so that we could give them I don't know what the right word is, a comfortable end-of-life experience, you know. Because they don't have many days left. And it's the least we can do. Something to think about, especially some of you guys are probably, maybe your parents are still alive, you know. And don't think for a minute that assisted living is the miracle solution to it, because it's not. And they lie about it too. I mean, they promised my mother-in-law everything. Oh, we'll take care of you. We've got round-the-clock nursing, and they'll assist you with everything, because, it's assisted living. And when she got there, they didn't do shit, She needed help going to the bathroom. She'd call them, can you help me get to the toilet? Yeah, we'll get around to it. An hour or two later, well, she done shit herself because, you can't hold it. Yeah, or they should have had somebody there like within a couple of minutes. Well, they don't care. It's like we work on their timeline, not the other way around. That's not acceptable. I would never go into that. And I told her, I cautioned her. She doesn't listen, unfortunately. She's a very stubborn woman. And I told her, I said, look, two things you never do. You don't confide in your doctor about anything. And you never let them take you out of your house. Because as soon as you do, your life's over. And she found out I was right. Now she's regretting it, And there isn't much we can do about it. I wish there was. Like I said, give me $1,000 a month or whatever, and we'll bring her here and take care of her. But them fuckers won't do it. They'd rather throw away $9,000 or whatever they're paying the nursing home, and they don't take care of her anyway. And well, you won't take care of your mother-in-law. I'll take care of her better than you fuckers are. And I won't drug her up to keep her compliant, That's no way to live. So don't give me this crap, we won't take care of her. We'll do a 10 times better job than you can even hope to do. And that's what needs to happen. So think about what I said today, and, hopefully if you, like I said, if you have aging parents or grandparents, try and do something to bring this about. Maybe we should start, harassing our politicians and our government, saying, look, we don't like the way you're doing things. This is what we want, and we're going to save you money at the same time. That might get their attention. Who knows? So something to think about. And until next time, we'll see ya.